All right, well, good morning again, and welcome back to session 4. If you're heading out to your breakouts, go ahead and do that. If you're here for the Perspective series, welcome back. Glad you decided to stick with us, especially you guys online as well. I know it's a little cumbersome this week. I used whimsical.com to make my own life map and do a little work on that, and I got to tell you, it was easier than I thought it was going to be, but there's just a number of steps to this thing, and it can be a little bit challenging, but what I want us to remember as we continue to dig in here today is that this journey is worth it. So we call the series Perspective because that's what we're after, right? We're after getting the right lenses on, being able to look at our life and God and the people in our life and the world around us the way that God sees them, right? That we want to get the bigger story. We want to get a bigger sense of what God is up to. And thank you, Perry. And it's all encompassed in, I love this neon sign that, I don't know, I just saw it online and I was like, this sign is amazing to me, right? I don't know where I'm going from here, but I promise it won't be boring. Again, who wants to be that kind of guy that has adventures to tell, right, at the end of your life? When you find yourself in the later stages and maybe even on your deathbed, if I can go there, right? You want to look back and you want to be like, yes, I didn't miss it, right? I had a moment even the other night where, actually it was last night, I was driving to pick up my daughter at 9:30 at night because that's when the 7th grade girls track team got home from their meet in Newton. And I'm watching this plane come in for a landing, and I've always loved aviation. I'm watching this aircraft, come in, and because I'm right under the landing track for the Des Moines airport, and I'm like, oh, I wish I was a pilot, Like, I've got a million jobs, and maybe you do as well, but I'm like, did I miss my calling? Like, I would love to be a pilot and just flying aircraft and being able to go see the world and do all those kinds of things, right? I'm not saying that I have missed my calling, but I'm saying that longing is in there, right? There's always something else, I think, that God wants us to dive into, something that he wants to bless us with. And I don't want us to be the kind of guys that come to the end and say, oh, we missed it, we weren't dialed in. That's why we're doing this series, because we want to have perspective. I keep pointing to my glasses, right? Because we're all looking through lenses and they're different. And over time, through the challenges and the pains and the ups and downs of our story, we allow those lenses to get molded and shaped and tweaked and different. I think when we're born, we certainly have a relationship with God, whether we realize it or not. But things happen to us. And so we're trying to understand that. That's why we're looking back as well. And so that's what it is. So what are we doing today? We're going to build our timelines. We're going to keep going in this process. I know some of you in this room are just starting today, and that is totally okay. We've got a track and a plan for you. I know some of you were here last week, and you loved it, and you couldn't get enough. And so we got a track and a plan for you. And some of you, you're like, I don't know about this, but I'm going to come back anyway and see what happens. We also have a track and a plan for you, and we are glad that you are here to be a part of it. One of the other things besides perspective that is our goal, I think, is community. I think it's for us to get to know each other. It's amazing to me how little, right? Even when you're in a men's group with someone for a decade, it's amazing to me how you never get all of the story. You can always learn something new when people get together and share a piece of their story. So that's what we're going to be doing the 5 weeks after this. I have different topics that I'm going to bring. I'm going to tee up, and you're going to have a full hour to go around and each share your answer to a question that involves you bringing up a piece of your story that you're comfortable bringing up. And so you can look forward to that as well. But all this is rooted in this idea. I love Ephesians chapter 2. It's probably one of my favorite chapters other than Romans 8 and the scriptures. And because it lays out all God's story, and you're saved by grace, and God, before he created time, he understood that he wanted us to be a part of his family, so he adopted us as sons and daughters and came to rescue us. And it's by grace we've been saved, right? It's not by our own doing. None of us can boast. Ephesians 8 and 9 says, well, then you're left asking the question, why? Like, why would God do all these things? Well, here's why. Because you're God's masterpiece. Turn to the person next to you and say, you're God's masterpiece. All right, if you're watching this video online today, say this to yourself, you are God's masterpiece, all right? Now, this also implies, right, masterpieces take time to be developed. Masterpieces don't happen instantly, right? You can't microwave a great meal. Like some of you think you can. I just want you to be very clear today. Microwave food is gross. Like you can't microwave a good meal, okay? You got to let it simmer. You got to let it stew. And the same is true with us. So turn to the person next to you that you just talked to and also say, and you can say this to yourself if you're watching this online today, you're a work in progress, okay? You're going to need a little bit more time in the oven, okay? Right? But the point is this. This is what we talked about last week, and this is what we talked about the first 2 weeks in the series. You saw it illustrated in front of you, right? God is not done with us yet. God has more in store for us. He has ways that he wants to mold and to shape us to look more like him. And to be able to get insight and understanding on that, then that's why we're taking the time today to create a personal timeline, but I like to call it your life map, okay? And so here's what we're going to do today. I just want to review where we've been. Steps 1 and 2, again, if you're just starting today, this is where you're going to start. And again, Mark is available over here. I would highly encourage you to move over there. You'll have time at the end of the day to reconnect with your group and debrief what happened and all those kinds of things. But I would encourage you to head on over there when it's time to get to work again. But this is what we did. We brainstormed step 1 was positive things that have happened to us, the moments that make us us. And there's some conversation starters again. You should have all of this on your sheet as well if you want to follow along just to prompt yourself. And then afterwards, we took our yellow sticky notes and the ones that were painful, we copied over to pink. And I just want to underline and underscore again the fact that we believe Romans 8:28, we take it at its word, that God's not going to waste our pain. In fact, God's going to work everything for our good. And so sometimes even the things that were challenging in our lives and hard and we would never want to go through actually have turned into blessings. God can do that. He can resurrect painful situations. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that we do want to go through these things again. But I'm not going to call the pink Post-it notes in my life negative, because they are opportunities. You can certainly do that if that's the way you feel about it. But we really wanted to emphasize in this exercise that God's not done with you yet, and that includes dealing with the pain from your past and what you've been through. So we'll call them painful notes. That is step 2, is to create your painful notes and to put those in there. And then step 3 is to put them in chronological order. And Mark will go through this with you, but you're going to want to leave room at the top, and it's not on this one, but you're going to want to leave room at the bottom as well. I've got an example of a post or a timeline I did a number of years ago. Right, you're going to want to leave a strip at the top for the blue. You're going to want to leave a strip at the bottom for the green, and then you organize them chronologically, and you can work your way through that. And if you're watching YouTube, just go down to the YouTube description below, and there'll be links to click to get all these documents and resources and things to help walk you through this process as well. Okay, so that's steps 1 through 3. Now, where are we going today? Well, today we're going to work on those blue Post-it notes. In fact, if you're with me on step 4, here's what you're going to do. You're going to move into creating chapters. We work through our stories in seasons, I believe. There are chunks of time where God kind of centers opportunities and moves us in certain directions. And so there are certain lessons that are learned. And so we found it really helpful to kind of demarcate, if you will, if I can use that word. I can't remember if I've ever used that word before. But you can create seasons, and you can go as creative as you want with this. I know people, and I respect people that are like, okay, season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4. That's totally cool. I also know the guy that facilitates this and from Terry Walling with Leader Breakthrough, who has graciously allowed us to use all of his resources this morning. He loves baseball. And so he talked about his early life, season of his life. He called it early innings. He had a couple others. I think one was called strikeout or something when things got really hard. And now being closer to retirement, he's getting to choose what he wants to do, not just for money, right? And so he titled that season For the Love of the Game. I remember him as he shared his story. In mine, I talked about childhood foundations. I talked about a season of stepping out in faith. Talked about receiving grace, and I talked about healing and being healed were kind of the way I looked at my different seasons. And like I said, I just spent some time last couple days working an up-to-date one. This one is actually from 2014, and so I had a lot of things to add, so I started doing that this week. And what I found was it was most helpful. I think I had 6 or 7, and it was where I was Was I in Story City, Iowa? Was I at the University of Northern Iowa? Was I in Seattle? Was I in West Des Moines the first time? Was I in Los Angeles, California when I was there? Is it when I came back to Hope, right? I just called it West Des Moines 2.0. You can lay these out however you want, and we don't have to take all day to do this. Put some thought into it. If nothing's coming, then just go the simple route. But I'd encourage you to think a little creative about that. Again, this is just an exercise that helps you look at the big picture of your life and say, okay, so there are different seasons. You may not even realize that you were in some of these seasons until you take the time to do that. So if you have questions, I'll be available at the back table. Ashley will be available if you're online with us on Zoom this morning. Or if you're on YouTube this morning, you can simply send an email to men@hopewdm.org. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you got questions, we'd love to help you. But let's take a few minutes and do one of two things. One, if we're on step 4, let's work on our chapters. If we are on step 1 this morning, make your way over here to Mark, and he will get you started, okay? We'll see you in a little bit. Oh, yeah, if you need a pen, Perry's got one. I'm like, what is he holding up? So, awesome. All right. Well, hopefully you got some time to get some chapters in there. I know some of you are in different places. I saw Perry is working on TV shows for each season of his life. So he had the Wonder Years, and he's working through. He had Breaking Bad, for the interesting parts, and then he's working on it. So, but this is one of those things. I think it's kind of good to let it come to you, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So. Feel free to keep working on that if you want. I'm going to add, though, step 5. We're going to move into step 5 now, which is identifying our turning points. These would be called super Post-it notes, if you will, but I would say you get to pick probably 5 or 6 things that if they didn't happen in your life, you would be the most different, right? You would be, they just have had a high impact for good or for worse. For better or for worse, okay? So these are defining moments. They're moments where they're not neutral, right? They're not just blah. They're moments that have really had an impact, a moment where life has changed, and it's probably affected your trajectory, okay? So we, in the past, have used red circles to mark these, but just put a T on that Post-it note, somewhere on that like a big capital T in there for turning point. And try and find 5 or 6 of those, identify those, and then we'll pull you back together in about 10 minutes, okay? We'll see you in a little bit. All right, so I see most of you, you have some turning points nailed down. I see half of you probably have your chapters, your titles done. And then some of us are still working on those, and that's okay to kind of set that over to the side. Again, you want that to come to you. Now we're going to move into, I think, one of my favorite parts of this whole activity is just understanding what God has taught us, what He's entrusted us with as we look at those seasons of life. And so now we're going to build these green Post-it notes. Remember, you left room at the bottom, right? Look at your neighbor, and if they didn't, you should scold them. No, just kidding, but we are going to fill those in now, and again, here are just some prompts to kind of help you think through this. You want to mind your turning points, but you can also look at the season that you're in as well. What did God deposit into your life is a great question, right? What is it that God tried to share with you? Most men I know, we don't learn things from other people's experience. Like, I watch YouTube videos of guys doing stupid stuff all the time. It's actually really entertaining and therapeutic, right? But have I been tempted every once in a while? I'm like, you know what? I'd like to try that too. We don't learn from other people's pain as much as we do our own. And so what is it? What are the experiences? What are the things that God has given you to try and teach you something? Specifically in those turning points, we're trying to narrow it down a little bit. But what is it He's deposited? What do you dare not forget is another way to say that. Maybe you've been through a season or experience that you're like, wow, I never want to go back there again. What do you dare not to repeat is another way of saying that. And then just lessons, right? What are nuggets of wisdom or understanding, themes, things that have emerged about life, people, what's important to God, character, hills you want to die on, things that are just you found to be a core value for you, something that you will bleed for, right? Where do those things come from? It's really important to understand that as well. So, okay? So take some time with that. Again, if you have questions, you can go ahead and send an email to men@hopewdm.org if you're watching on YouTube, or you can come find me in the back of the room, or you can talk to Ashley on Zoom, and then we'll get your questions answered, okay? So we'll pull you back together in a little bit. All right. We got everybody gathered together again. We got our guys online are back in the room with us, and we've got the guys that are just starting out today, and we got the guys that are all the way through the 6 steps. Hopefully, you got something done. Good job if you made it all the way through it. If you still got work to do, no problem. This is a working document. It's never finished, right? You can always add things to it. You'll be driving and thinking, oh yeah, what about this? And make sure you write that down, or ask Siri to remind you, or whatever it looks like, because this is one of those things, it comes to us over time. And I just think you can't put a price tag on having great perspective. And perspective comes looking back, learning, processing, and then using that, right, as our way of looking forward. Our mindset is, one gentleman and I were talking about, right? As we think about the different seasons we've been through, and the ways that God has impacted us, one of the things that gets impacted as we go through it is our mindset. And sometimes that's off track, and God's got to straighten us out again. And it's amazing. I have a theme in my story. When you look at patterns and themes and things like that, one of the things I've noticed is I have a couple of moments where I have a pink Post-it note, something happened, then a person showed up in my life, kind of unexpectedly, and then the turning point came right after that. And I think it's 3 or 4 or 5 of those, depending upon the version of my life map that I was able to identify. And what that does, right, is gives me a green Post-it note that God is right there with me, right? That is a fact that I can look back in my story and I can understand He was there in the past. That gives me confidence to understand He will be there in the future as well. And so keep looking for those patterns and those things that jump out at you. And that's part of why we're going to take a number of weeks and share and process and let other people into our stories, so then that they can ask us questions. It's amazing to me, and Jesus was a master of this, how the right question at the right moment can send you on a whole different trajectory in a really powerful way. So, all right. With that, I just want to say thank you for being a part of this process. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for hanging in there as well. Again, if any questions come up, you can send an email to men@hopewdm.org and let us know. We'd love to walk you through that and check in with you on that. I just want to wrap us up here today by turning you back into your large groups and just a debriefing time. You can go wherever you want to go with this, but how did it go for you today doing this? And then what is one thing you noticed about your story as you spent some more time working on it today? So, all right. So with that, we'll release you to your groups, and we will see you soon.